Um, First things first, apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillors Holloway and Councillors Green. Are there any other apologies for absence? No, thank you. Okay, item 2 is to receive the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of January 2026, as outlined in the agenda. Are there any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? Are we happy to approve the minutes then? Yep, okay, thank you. The minutes are approved. Item 3, are there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Item 4 concerns unplanned scrutiny items and members' rights of reference. I've not been notified of any such items. Item 5 then is Q3 Financial Outturn Report 2025-26, which can be found at pages 13 to 90 of the agenda. And can I ask Dawn Calvert to present the report, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. And what we've done, if it's okay, Chair, we've done a summary set of slides just to sort of help go through the key points of the report, because it's quite a long report, so I think our colleagues are going to put them up for us. So what we've got in front of you is you have got the Q3 monitoring report. So this covers revenue, capital, DSG, HRA, so and our update on asset disposals and divestments. So it's our forecast as at where we think we are going to be as at the 31st of March. So that's what we do. We always forecast to the end of the year. Now, what we are saying is at this position is that we are saying that we are forecasting an underspend of £23 million for the year. That is predominantly falling in the corporate and treasury areas, and I'll explain that to you a little bit more in detail. We have a savings target of, I think it's just under £19 million in this year's budget. Those savings are progressing very well. We've got 84% on track and delivered, and we have just over £1 million that we know is red, and where we've provided for that in the budget for 26-27. What we're going to just take you through a little bit, because what I do understand is £23 million is a big underspend. We had a significant underspend last year. It's good in some ways because it demonstrates our financial grip on the budget, which is very, very important. And we're just going to explain about how, what is happening in Q3, how we've reflected that in the budget in terms of the amendments that we've made. And also what is happening is our request for our exceptional financial support, because the overall budget pressure is coming down. That has also reduced as well. And we all know that in the budget papers we saw that our request for exceptional financial support, so that is the money that we need over a 7-year period to help set our legal requirement of a balanced budget, has fallen from 691 million to 637 million, is our forecast as at February when we set the budget. So next slide. So in terms of the headlines from Q3, because we do accept this is a very long report, and we talked about this last time, it is a long report. Why we've been sorting out through all the numbers, we've kept it in its current format, but we're going to radically reduce it at outturn when we come to outturn and come to June or July cabinet. And obviously we're going to do a much shorter version, and one of the things that David's working on is how do we as well use our systems better to generate them reports and make them shorter. So in terms of where has that £23 million come from, it's not significantly different to Q2 as well. So across our service directorates, we have an underspend of £500,000. So obviously the bulk of our money is spent on our services. We have an underspend of just under £500,000, and that's got better from Q2, where we were slightly overspending on across our directorate budgets. So that's good. You know, it's very much a push for services to maintain their services within the agreed budget envelope. Now, we have got quite a significant underspend against our corporate and technical budgets, but once again, that's fairly consistent with Q2. Now, corporate and technical budgets tend to be the stuff that we hold, capital financing, contingencies, and our technical things tend to be levies. Now, the biggest area of this corporate budget, we have a one revenue contingency that's an ongoing contingency in our budget. That contingency is held for a significant chunk of the contingencies for unforeseen items, because things will happen during the year that we can't foresee. We could have we could have a variety of issues that we can't foresee. What we do very transparently, that contingency was reduced in this year's budget. That was very transparent during the last budget report. We're very transparent how we use that contingency. If we don't use that contingency, it's held as an underspend, and that's reflected in that £9.4 million underspend. And also within that underspend, when we set our budget last year, we did a lot of work on growth. And so our MTFS included growth estimates for our services. What we did say is that we would only, even though we provided for the growth in the MTFS, that growth would not be automatically allocated. Services would have to demonstrate why they needed the growth. And so what we've done is not all the growth that has been requested has been allocated out. And so we have held that growth centrally, and we've adjusted for it in next year's budget. So, for example, on the adult services, we actually didn't give adult services any growth this year because there was a reserve on the Better Care Fund, so we felt it was better to use that to fund their growth, and we would hold that, use the reserve and hold that money in the budget centrally. And we didn't need all the growth that was required for across some of our place budgets and the full amount of growth for the homelessness pressures, because they have been reducing during the year. So hence that's why we've had an underspend there. And then we've also got an underspend across our treasury management costs. Now, our treasury management costs cover, as they say there, it's our cost of borrowing, and it's the treasury costs that are incurred on the level of our borrowing. Now, we have been quite transparent about this. Now, when we set our treasury cost budget, we have to make an assumption that our capital programme will be spent, our budget will be spent. Our budget will be spent in full, our revenue budget. Obviously, as we've gone through the year, our revenue budget is got an underspend, so we don't need to borrow as much exceptional financial support, so that brings the costs down. We know that our capital programme was underspent again, which is not ideal, and we need to do a lot of work on that next year. But because we haven't spent the capital programme, we haven't had to borrow the funding, so obviously we save on our costs. But the other big chunk of this treasury management, and we have talked about this at this committee before, is that there's some things of this budget that's quite difficult to forecast. So, for example, as part of our divestment programme, we are still receiving some income from divestments until they're sold. That income is not regular, so obviously we don't budget for that. So when it comes in, we treat it as a cash windfall in effect. And the other area as well is on the divestment around the solar farms, the administrators are holding some funds that would normally come back to us, that they're holding funds, and when certain processes are done, if that income is not used, it comes back to us. So we will get during the year payments of roughly around about £1 million. I think we've had 3 in this year. But once again, it's only when a certain process has happened that we can get that funding back, so it's quite difficult to forecast. So once again, when they come in, they are an underspend, they're a cash windfall to us, but we're very transparent and put that through our monitoring. And then also this year, which there's no change from Q2, is that we have the additional funding of the Provider Extended Responsibility Grant. Now, some of that grant is being used to fund a 3-year programme that Cabinet has approved, but the balance of the funding we can use for waste disposal costs that reflected elsewhere in the budget, so we just hold that sum centrally. Once again, that is a sum that's quite challenging to budget for, so that is the money that we get where providers have to pay a tax on their packaging, because obviously there's more packaging that comes with local authority have to collect that and dispose of it. In theory, that is a funding stream that will start to come down as packaging changes. That funding should come down, but we hold that centrally. So that's what's making up our 23 million, and it doesn't really change very much from Q2. So our forecasting is getting, is helpfully getting is consistent. Now, what we will be doing is our outturn report, which does it come July? Is it, David? Yep. So it comes in July to Cabinet. We will be doing the same as we did last year. We will, out of our £23 million, we will be making a recommendation to a one-off contribution towards our debt. We will be assessing what the council needs for LGR. We have to be realistic about what that needs. Do we need any more than we've currently got set aside? We have a significant transformation programme across the organisation. We do have a reserve set aside for that, but we have to make sure that's sufficient to make sure that the transformation the council does is provided for. So that's really the key areas of the big areas of our underspend for quarter three, and I'd say it hasn't changed that much from quarter two. Next slide. On the next slide, this is just the summary from the table from the report, which is the standard table we put in just to explain to you how it's moved. So as you can see, at quarter two we were 22.8 million, and at quarter three we're 23 million. So that hasn't changed too much between the periods. And I think, David, am I correct in that we are still holding back £1 million in the contingency forecast? So on our corporate contingency, we're still forecast holding back £1 million just in case anything happens towards the end of the year. So at outturn, if we don't need that, that will be represented in the outturn. So we could see it go up by £1 million. Next slide, Kenna. So this is just a bit summary for you, just to give you some confidence about how the savings are doing in the budget. So obviously we have in our budget, we have £18.9 million savings built into the current year budget. So this is just a summary to explain to you how, that helpfully at quarter three, what we're saying is that we've got no savings that are at risk, so all our savings have been delivered. We have 6% that we know, so as you can see, it's £1.1 million, and £1 million of that has been written out of the budget for next year. We were transparent in the budget papers, and there's a couple of savings that will have just over 100,000 that will carry forward into next year. But I think what is encouraging about this summary is that, and we will do the same next year, is 18.9 is a significant savings target, and obviously at the start of the year we had 8% was red. That's pretty much stayed static. But what is really good is that we had 23% at risk at the start of the year, and they've progressed down to 0. So when we're talking to our colleagues, I think what we don't want to do is start the year off saying everything is fine, and then if we want to be very honest at the start of the year and say this is where we realistically think we are on the savings, and then we can track how we work on them and make sure they're delivered by the end of the year. And just to give you confidence, we're currently working on an early heads up of the 26-27 savings, so we're working through, are we ready, have actions been taken, etc., so that when we come to Cabinet with our first quarter, we have as positive position to report as possible. Next slide. And then this is just about to give you confidence in terms of how we are constantly looking at what's going on in year and how we've reflected that in our budget and MTFS across that was agreed in Cabinet in February. Because we can't, when we're setting our budget for next year, we can't ignore the fact we have an underspend this year. So we don't have, helpfully on our service budgets, they're pretty much balanced. They're only £500,000 underspend. We've done a lot of that rebasing, because if you remember from the from 24-25, our service position shifted quite significantly towards year end. And we suddenly had a big dip in as an underspend, and it was, well, why has that happened? So we need to do a lot of rebasing and really helping and supporting our services to get their forecasting on track. So I think the fact that we're only £500,000 adrift that year hopefully gives confidence that work has been done. So in terms of the budgets, we rebase as much as we can, and I think what we've acknowledged before is some of our reporting is it does talk about lots and lots of movement of the budget as we really try to make sure it's in the right place. Obviously, I've talked about some of the underspend because we're holding some of that growth pressure back. So we've reviewed all the growth, and we have reduced our growth in the budget for next year. So we've gone down from 9.1 million to 7.5. So where people haven't needed the growth this year, we've revised all them estimates for future years. The Treasury underspend, so obviously we have revised our Treasury costs. We've brought those estimates down across the MTFS. But on Treasury, this is an area where we probably will still see a bit of an unbudgeted underspend next year, because we will continue to receive them cash sums linked to the administration. And once again, we have we have about 5 or 6 what we call our tail end investments that have still got to be divested. And we continue to get a little bit of revenue stream from them until we fully divest them. And so we will continue, we will see a few underspends next year. And also we continue to have our contingency for unforeseen items. It's set at 1% of our revenue budget. It's there. We do need some cushion, but obviously if it's not used, it will continue to underspend. And when we continue to review whether we need that provision. So next slide. So we've just got a couple of slides here on the other big areas that's covered in the budget. So we've got the housing revenue account. We're forecasting a slight underspend on this. Once again, it's a little bit less than in previous years. I think we were about a couple of million last year, and we are currently working on a fundamental review of the HRA business plan. So we're going through all these budgets again in preparation for a revised business plan coming back to Cabinet in November. Next one, Kenna. DSG, so that's our dedicated schools grant. I'm sure you've all read in the national press over the last few weeks what the government's doing on our SEND reforms. So our forecast pressure against our DSG, which is predominantly against that high needs block, is £6.7 million. And the final budget explained, that there is now going to be some support coming in for the DSG pressures. And we are waiting. That was announced in the final settlement in February, so we're waiting for that detail. So some of that overspend pressure, with the support that the government should put in should be addressed this year. I think we potentially going to be left with about 10% of that the council will have to manage, and we explain that in detail in the final budget report. And the last slide, Kenna, is capital. Now, we know that our underspend on our capital budget has gone up increasingly over the year. So this is something that we are very much need to look at to see what we're going to do differently next year. Some of those schemes, they are big schemes. There is a rationale for why they are slipping, but we are going to do more work on this. When we set our capital programme for next year, we added very little into our capital programme, so we only added a couple of schemes in. At £460,000. So there's not a lot going into the capital to potentially add to that slippage position, but we are going to do, we are going to really focus on that in Q1 and make sure that our governance around the capital programme and our holding people to account for schemes, etc., is we're going to review all that. And I think is that the last slide? So in terms of conclusion, so we have very much worked through our Q2 and Q3 positions to make sure that our budget that we presented to Cabinet is as robust as possible and really correlates to what's going on in the current financial year as well as what the settlement said to us. So we've been able to reduce our growth, and we will do exactly the same with growth this year. The growth that is in, for next year's budget, the growth that is in the budget for 26-27, it's not going to be allocated out to directorates. They will need to apply for it. We understand where we are on savings, and we've reflected the Treasury cost budgets across. We've revised our Treasury cost budgets, and obviously that contributed to our exceptional financial support being able to go down. And I think that's all I wanted to say, Cam. I think that's my last slide. I think that's all I wanted to say, Chair. Open to questions.
Thank you, Dawn. That was a really helpful report and presentation as ever. I think you've answered a lot of my questions in that, but are there any questions from members? Yep, Councillor Cockshaw.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you, Dawn. Just to echo the comments, this is really helpful in terms of where to see. I know you say it's a large report, but it's very helpful to see some of the work that's being done, and especially how it's been improving in terms of the capital programme for next year that just needs to be ransacked, I think, in best ways to just say let's actually look at what can we actually achieve. Just on the HRA, and it was something I saw slightly in the budget process last full council, where we talk about this variance of 6 days income that's been posted from 24-20, or relating to 25-26, posted to 24-25. Is that just an issue of we've had that in, say, a holding account that it's not been matched? It's just odd that we're very specific for 6 days income suddenly to be, just transferred in, as part of the year-end process? Was that just money that sat there that we hadn't assigned to properties, or was that money we've had to recover? I'm just not too sure. On page 55, yeah, just a 4.2.3. Rents, it's under the rents and income. I know you referenced it on the presentation, saying there's a prior year posting error.
So that's an adjustment that happens every year because it always ends on the 31st of March, but the rental system rules, it will end on the Sunday, whatever day we do it here. So there's always that adjustment that needs to happen. That references something where there was an error in the way that was done. So that was just a correction.
No, thank you. I was trying to rack my brain about that. That's really helpful.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? No? Okay. Just a quick few from me. They're a bit specific. I think as Councillor Coxall said, I think we take a lot of heart really from what you've said, and I think it's clear that there are processes in place to manage some of the issues that we're seeing next year. One of the things I mentioned at the last meeting, I think it was in relation to staffing. That's one of the things that is it's fueling some of the underspends and the overspends. Obviously, where we've got agency staff, that can create a pressure, but a lot of posts remain vacant because it's not, you know, we've always historically as a council had problems recruiting, and obviously that's particularly acute at the moment. I know that is in some departments that means staff are having to carry more. It's creating personal pressures. They're having to carry out more work, but nonetheless, where those services are functioning well, next year, is there a case for really reviewing whether some of those posts are actually needed? Some of these positions have been vacant for a long time. The services appear to be coping, albeit, you know, I understand there might be some pressures there, but as part of our efforts next year, is there a case of deleting more of these vacant posts if the services, as I say, are coping?
That's a very good question, and obviously, yes, if we do have vacant posts that are not needed, then they will be removed from the structure and reported. But what we do have to bear in mind on salaries is what we look at is we've got a salary budget, and that salary budget has to cover the cost of the payroll and it has to cover the cost of our agency staff. So what we do is, and we will be reporting this, because I think it's part of Sarah's Q3 as well, is making sure that that payroll budget funds the cost of our salary budget funds the cost of the payroll and the agency. So we just need to be careful that we tend to look at that as a global position. So we just need to bear in mind that some permanent posts are being covered from agency. So we can't necessarily reduce the budget. We can't necessarily delete the post. But where there are some that are sustained empty and we do not need that budget to fund agency costs, then we can look at removing that from the budget.
Thank you. And then on page 39, one of the, again, it's an observation. I know there's probably not much you can say to this, but unaccompanied asylum seekers and those with no recourse to public funds, which tend always to be immigrant families, we're carrying a really unfair burden there, I think. My calculations are right, it's well over £700,000 now, which isn't reclaimable. I'm not in the habit of writing to ministers and writing to government because I think that it lands on a civil servant's desk and is ignored or gets a stock reply. But I really do think it's unfair that Thurrock taxpayers are increasingly carrying these kind of costs for what is mismanagement of border controls by central government. And I suppose it's a recommendation to Cabinet. Again, it's not urgent. I do think, I know it's something that all councils are experiencing. It's not unique to Thurrock, but at some point, I think that a lot of noise is going to have to be made to central government. It's simply unfair that level of burden is being endured. I know, again, not something for you to comment on. I'm just, you know, place it on record my views and hope that in the next municipal year it is something that whoever's in administration pursues with government, because I think those kind of burdens are grossly unfair. Just a couple of questions you might be able to answer. Page 42, bad debt. There's an increase of £363,000. Again, I know all councils carry an element of bad debt, but what was the rationale for effectively writing off that additional amount?
So what we're saying in that element there is that we're actually increasing the bad debt provision. So it's in your reference is in reference to homelessness, and what the report is saying is that we are increasing the bad debt provision. Now, what we have to do, and I think what we have to do every year, there is a calculation that we apply to our bad debt. So you'll make judgments as to what percentage you apply in terms of how aged a debt is. Now we do have some historic problems on that area for debt collection. We're working through them. There will be some debts that we will be unable to collect, and hence why we need to include that bad debt provision so that we have the funding to do them. But obviously what we need, it's never ideal if we have to increase our bad debt provision, and it is we do a lot of work on bad debt. What we acknowledge is that we have not included that information in the quarterly reporting, but it will be coming to Cabinet next year. So it's very clear what we have got and what we're doing to manage that, and to make sure that we don't have to increase those bad debt provisions.
Okay, is that what I'm looking at there? Is that mainly overpayments of housing benefit that haven't been recovered? Or, I mean, what it says, tenant debts, again, I know it's unfair for you to ask you to give a detailed reply, but is that what we're probably looking at here, housing benefit overpayments?
Yeah, it's going to be one of two things. Either there's a proportion of the rent which is covered by housing benefit and that should fall to the tenant to pay, or it will be where a housing benefit was paid, but then the circumstances of the family changed and they weren't entitled to it as much, whatever, so there would have been a reduction in and requirement for them to repay. Now, the issue there does relate to mainly to when the household leaves and become former tenants, you have higher rate of recovery if you can collect the money while they're still tenants. If they move, and you may not have a chance, but if they move out, as soon as they become former tenants, the rate at which we expect to recover reduces, and that's why the bad debt provision goes up. We would still chase the debt, we can get it, but we actually make more provision for the fact we may not be able to get that money.
Sure, and I think I said, I mean, all councils carry an element of bad debt, but I suppose what I'm looking for really is an assurance that that's more a one-off, because I think there's two issues here. First of all, it's galling to see that the council's bad debt increased by that jump that it did. But again, there is a fairness element when people are receiving taxpayers' money that they're not entitled to and it's being written off. I think that the council is morally obliged to recover as much of that debt as possible. It's effectively theft from the public purse, even if it's not intentional. It's not money that grows on trees. It's hard-pressed taxpayers who are funding that. So, I suppose what I'm looking for is an assurance that we're not going to see that kind of trend every year. I accept the bad debt does go up, but it's a one-off. I hope it's a one-off write-off of what is a substantial amount of money.
I think it's a very fair comment. Now, what we are going to do for next year, and is that we are going to start reporting our debt position, our debt position, our collection rates, etc., every quarter as part of our monitoring report, because then that will be transparent for you, and it will also hopefully give you, because our collection rates are good, but it will be giving you that assurance that we are actively pursuing us and collecting as much debt as we possibly can, and to hopefully give you that assurance that we don't see another blip. I can't guarantee we won't do, but I think if we're open and transparent in terms of our debt collection, that will hopefully be helpful for you.
Thank you. And a final question for me on page 48. Again, I I think I asked you a question on this at the last meeting, Dawn, in relation to increasing numbers of residents qualifying for council tax discounts, meaning that our collection rates are falling. It is something that concerns me because obviously Thurrock has got a historical problem with our council tax base and frankly not having enough Band D properties. It's bad enough when you see a figure of £800,000 shortfall in the next budget, but is that, again, it's a difficult question because you can't answer it categorically, but if that trend continues to grow, it's going to have in future years, not too far away, quite, I would think, quite a significant impact on Thurrock's sustainability. One of the things we have to do if we are going to become a sustainable council is become self-funding, and council tax is essential. We're seeing figures like nearly £1 million not being recovered because of discounts, more and more residents becoming eligible for discounts. That again is something that is surely going to have to be addressed with the Treasury at some point. It directly undermines our sustainability if that trend continues.
The £800,000 that you're talking about, the collection fund deficit, is not fully attributable to the discount issue. But you are right in that our is the council tax base as well, so it's not fully reflective to the issue of discounts. But you are right in that we have seen our discount, particularly around single person discount, slowly increasing. Now, you're right. How that's going to happen in the future, I don't know. It is a statutory discount, so it's not something that we have any control over, and it's something that we sort of manage over our MTFS in terms of what we think that's going to happen, what's going to happen to that base. Just to give you some assurance as well, we do embark in a significant amount of data matching with our fraud team and our housing benefit scheme. So we're part of a scheme as well with Greater Essex, where we do lots of data matching across the Greater Essex region to try and make sure that we have not got people trying to claim a discount from us or registered somewhere. So it's something that's really outside of our control, but we do make sure that we engage in them exercises to make sure that the discounts that we do have to allocate, we're trying to prevent any misuse of that discount.
Thank you. I've got no further questions, so I'll offer it out. Any final questions before we move on? No? Okay, thank you. So the recommendations are on page 17. I'm not going to read them because they're all to note, but if members just turn to those recommendations, are we happy with them as they are and happy to note? Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Dawn, once again for that report. It was really helpful and really reassuring. Thank you. So we are on item 6, which is members at pilot update, pages 91 to 98 of the agenda. And is that Tracy? Yep.
Thank you, Chair.
Over to you.
Hello, everyone. So I'm here to present an update on the members app pilot. Hopefully you've had time to review the report, so I'll just highlight the key points from the report. And the report is from page 91 in the pack. So just to summarise, back in July 24, the complaints team moved into my customer services department, and at the same time, Councillor Mayne, you requested me to attend Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee to discuss the Members App process, which I did. At the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny session, we agreed that we were going to set up a small working group to examine the process in more detail, so the Members App process. And we set up that group, which we called the Members Digital Engagement Group. The group's initial focus was to review the existing members' inquiry process, which is largely a manual process where members email the members' inquiries email box. We had just started implementation of a new complaint system called Information, which was used for both complaints, for freedom of information and subject access requests. And included within that system, there was a members app. So we agreed at the engagement meetings that we were going to begin a pilot on that members app that we had free of charge. So we set that up with 4 members initially. Everybody agreed to trial the members app. We were initially going to do it for a 4-week period, but due to the low numbers that were actually going through the app, we extended that. And in September, a further additional 6 councillors joined the pilot. Now, unfortunately, the volume of inquiries that have been submitted through the app for various reasons has been fairly low. So from the period of February to November, we only had a total of 113 inquiries that were submitted through the app. So I think really the purpose of today and reviewing this is to just make a decision about how we go forward with the app. Do we stop using the app? Do we let members choose whether they actually use the app or just continue to use the existing process? Do we insist that when new members join, they go straight onto the app, so that is their ongoing method of referring members' inquiries? We did get some feedback from councillors that were included on the app, and it was mixed feedback, really, to be honest. Some councillors said they found the app more convenient. Some said the response from officers is very good anyway, and that we need to make sure that once the trial has ended, that continues to happen. Somebody said the app was convenient as they could use it on their phone and it was very quick for reporting. There were some other points that were raised about the app. I know that you personally, Councillor Maney, didn't find the uploading of documents that helpful. So we really sort of had some mixed feedback about it, and we just sort of need to decide now whether we go forward with it or whether we just extend the pilot further. The key benefits of using an app are that you can track the inquiries that you raise. So as a councillor, you can search on all the inquiries that you've raised rather than having to look through emails that you've sent. It is apparent that a lot of members do have direct contact with specific officers who they know they're going to get a really timely response from, and that's sort of just human nature. People will go to somebody if they know they're going to respond very quickly. The actual response levels for the members' inquiries, 95% were responded to within the time frame. So it is a good level of response, but the target is 10 working days for members' inquiries. So the target is exceeded. Between April and September this year, we've had 1,835 members' inquiries. For the same period last year, we had 2,588. So we have had a substantial drop in members' inquiries. We've also done some benchmarking with lots of other councils to see how they facilitate their members' inquiries process. A lot of councils are still using the email or web form process. The only council that we've identified that fully utilises a member self-service app is Croydon Council, and they use the same information system that we also have the option of. So it's just really to discuss the way forward with it now. From a complaints team perspective, we have no issue if members would like to choose the method that they use. So originally we thought, well, we'd like to insist that it's one way or the other, but actually it doesn't really cause us a significant problem if some members prefer to use the email methodology and some people prefer to use the app. So we can facilitate that if that is the requirement. So yeah, I guess it's just over to you to sort of have that discussion and decide what we want to do as the next steps. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Are there any comments or questions from members? Councillor Cockshaw.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tracy. I think from looking at what's in front of us, and I know from my personal experience of using the app, there was times I thought, yes, it's actually quite convenient. The option of just saying, look, I don't need to respond, just make sure you go back to the resident actually was quite helpful. I think for looking forward, and I think we have an opportunity here, I don't see why we need to discontinue the app at all. I think it's very reasonable. We have a new intake of councillors possibly in May. I don't see why we don't just pivot to say that this is the option we prefer, but then always keep the members' inquiries inbox there. I think that we won't get an opportunity like this to actually roll out the app across all the council with knowing that you've got 49 possibly new members coming in with a small majority maybe returning. You just don't know. But I think there's an opportunity there to actually do that, and suddenly you actually change the way that the members' inquiries do come through. So I think just other councillors may have their own views, but I see that as a very reasonable thing. If we already use this system for the complaints team, I don't see why we just don't make this feel like the default from May.
Thank you. And yeah, as I say, for us, we have no issue either way. It is very difficult for members. If you're used to using a certain method and, you know, if you've got direct contacts with officers and you know you're going to get a big response, then it is quite a big change for people to use it. So I do get that. But yeah, I agree, it is a really good opportunity. And if people are trained to use that method from the start and they don't sort of use the other way, then it could probably be quite successful. So yeah, I totally agree with what you've said. It'd just be interesting to get others' views because quite a few people in here have actually been on the pilot. So it would be really interested to get those views.
Councillor Fletcher and then Councillor Panjala.
I think it's time for admissions. I'm one of the four. And I actually, fundamentally, I completely failed to get the thing to load onto my phone. Made 2 or 3 attempts, ended up giving up and carrying on. And it's exactly as you say, because the email route works, you know, I mean, it's pathetic that as somebody who spent quite a large part of my working life trying to help people negotiate change, I'm crap at negotiating change. If what I'm doing works, I tend to stick to it. I totally agree with George, though. If you're in a situation where you can actually introduce people to the new method and that's the only game in town, that's probably one of the best ways of moving people, you know. I suppose it's the Catholic guilt in me. I think that probably people like myself should at some point be forced to go on to it. Otherwise, I will stick with what has worked for me. And you know, I'm conscious that reading some of these comments about the app, it sounds like people are getting out of it what they're sort of putting into it. I can't comment because I haven't tried it. Yeah, I'm probably a good example of why having the 2 routes will be of limited use to you, because you'll have people like me who'll just keep going. Where you can, and particularly with new members, yeah, by all means, get them onto it. It sounds like fundamentally it works. It sounds like the response times are similar to what we get from the email, so you're not losing you know, service standards. And certainly, for, you know, given that the downside of doing it my ways, I have to remember and diarise to follow up on an email if it doesn't, you know, if I don't get a response. You know, that ought to mean for somebody like myself that actually it's, you know, it's a big incentive. As I say, if the damn thing had worked on my phone, and I think it's probably my phone rather than the damn thing, I'd probably be a convinced user by now. You know, just to give you an idea, it's taken me until last week to get my laptop up to Windows 11, so it's not just the app's fault.
Thank you. And if you do need any assistance with actually getting that set up, I'm more than happy to facilitate that for you.
I think it's going to need that. I mean, as I mentioned to one of your team, about the 3rd or 4th time I spoke to IT and they went, "What information system?" I kind of went, stuff it, and you know, as one does.
I'm sure we can resolve that for you. Leave that one with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Panjala.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. Thank you for the report. I would like to from my side, I want to say that one keeping app as well as email, both whoever use that one convenient for them, they will use it. And also I have two queries about that one. When we are using app, is there any performance, we can see the improvement in the performance. Normally when we raise the a members inquiry through the email, normally it will take 10 working days to respond. So in that, any improvement we can see using app?
To be totally honest with you, no, because the actual requests, my team facilitate getting those responses for you and reporting on those, but it's the actual service responsibility for all the different services to respond to the inquiry. So I don't think the benefit is in relation to turnaround times, because the turnaround times are actually pretty good and we're exceeding the target for those. But I think the benefit for a member is more that instead of searching through emails and things, they can track all the inquiries that they have raised onto the app and see the history of that process. So that's really more the benefit rather than turnaround times. I wouldn't want to falsely give you the impression that you're going to get all your responses within 2 days, because the services just haven't got the capacity to do that. And we have looked at potentially reducing the number of days for members' inquiries response, but it just puts more pressure on the service to actually do that. And because there doesn't appear to be an issue, I did offer at the last meeting that I attended that if anybody was having problems with getting responses to members' inquiries, that they are more than welcome to email me, and I will follow up and escalate that, and obviously pick up any trends if there are certain areas that members are having problems with. But I haven't had any raised with me for a considerable period, but that offer still stands. If anyone has issues with any department with getting responses, please let me know, and I will escalate that with the service leads.
Thank you for the answer. I have one more query about that one. Introducing this app, it will go into additional cost for the Thurrock Council, additional burden in terms of the finance?
No, there are no additional costs. The information app was actually, the system was a relatively low-cost system, and the members app was included free with the other aspects of the system, i.e. the complaints, the freedom of information and subject access requests, which really was why I didn't then explore another app, because obviously the council's financial situation, it would be more beneficial to use what we've got included within that cost of the system. So there's no additional cost whatsoever.
Thank you for your answer. In this case, I recommend to keep app as well as emails, both. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I'm guessing because it's a sort of externally procured app, we don't have the ability to amend the functionality, improve the functionality in any way?
They will do certain requests for us, and Councillor Mainey's request to improve the uploading of documents, we have got on the suppliers waiting list, so we haven't ignored that. They are a relatively small company, I have to say, so we're pretty much in their hands with how quickly they can do some changes. But if there are any changes that are identified, we do request them with the supplier. And I know they have made a few small tweaks to the app that we requested when we first went live with it. So I wouldn't say no, we can't change anything, but obviously they use this app with various councils across the country, so we're a little bit in the hands of supplier with it, but we always will go through and request, and we are constantly chasing the uploading docs. It's just when they're in a position to get to that. So.
Okay, and we don't foresee any issues insofar as, you know, when software needs updates, and it has issue. I'm thinking the last job that I was in, we had a piece of software that was developed in-house, but it was always needing updates, and the new updates would cause new problems, which would require new updates. And if we're in their hands, and you know something particularly bad that affects the functionality happens, then if we were to only have the app, we'd be in a bit of trouble, wouldn't we? So it sounds as though keeping the email option is probably a wise choice.
We have totally gone to the app for complaints, freedom of information, subject access requests, and we haven't had any problems with the system from that perspective. It took us a while to set up the reporting functions within the system, but they have now resolved all those issues for us, and we've got the reports to exactly how we want them now. So they have been proactive in dealing with responses to that. Yeah, from my perspective, I'm happy to facilitate both methods and keep the email option there. And if we did ever have a problem, that option is still there for people to use, and we can manage it on our team. We thought initially it might be problematic trying to deal with two methods of inquiries coming in, but as it happens, it doesn't make that much difference to us. It's not a problem. So we just want it to work for members so that, you know, you've got the option that best suits you and makes you feel comfortable with going back to your residence. So
Yeah, I think keeping the two options on the table is probably preferable, and as has already been mentioned, there's obviously a natural point now to introduce this. It'd be stupid for us to not do it now, and then a couple of years down the line, you know, when a potentially new cohort of councils have got used to just the members' inquiry system, to then roll out. So, you know, if we're going to do this, we should do it now.
that's really helpful, thank you. And I will pick up with Jenny Shade in relation to the members' induction, so that we can help facilitate the introduction of this app throughout that process, if everybody is agreeable to that. Thank you.
Councillor Cecil, did you have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you. It's been my experience, I've stayed with the Members' Inquiry email system for 3 years I've been involved. And is it indicative that services have improved? And have you been able to measure the service improvement by the fact that Members' Inquiries emails have reduced? Because that's been my experience, that I haven't had the bundles of inquiries on services like bins and cleaning and greening that I did in my first year. So do we know how much improvement from services has been shown by these members' inquiries system?
Sorry. I think we do, and I was only at Audit Committee on Tuesday night this week presenting the Corporate Complaints Report, and it's very clear to see that waste complaints have reduced dramatically. So last year, for example, there was a really high volume of waste complaints when the fortnightly collections and the charges for garden waste were introduced. And we all know that waste is always very high profile with residents. And I do think there is definitely a correlation with that dip in complaints against the drop also in members' inquiries that we've had for the same period. So I definitely think that's aligned. And you know, we do monitor for all the services, the time it's taking each service to respond to members' inquiries and so forth. And my team are now very proactive in chasing up things with those services, which I think then does result in reduced emails from councillors chasing those things. So we are really trying to make it as efficient as possible as we can for you. But of course, if you do have any issues with any of the services and getting responses, please do let me know and I'll follow it up for you. Thank you.
Can I have a sort of interest? A thought, if we're going to run with two systems, it has problems because members' inquiries to me through the email, I don't get the easy feedback of how much has gone to the resident. So I would be looking for changes to the email, but it's no point in changing the email system if it could be covered through the tracking on the app. So would somebody look at that? We don't want to be pushing forward with changes and improvements to two. If one is better and covers, in particular, the feedback from what the resident, in particular, was the resident satisfied, or what were the residents' further complaints, which brings it into your complaint system. At what point did the resident say, not happy, in goes a complaint? So I think about running two systems when we're trying to improve and find the best way of doing it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with what you've said. Ideally, one system would be the most appropriate way to go forward. But in the same token, it's not always the option that all members would like to use. And, you know, we've seen ourselves the challenge with trying to encourage members to use a different system. So it's not going to be an easy thing to get all members to agree that they're going to use an app. It's going to be a challenge. So, you know, I mean, if I was instructed, yeah, everyone's got to use the app and so forth, that's fine for me. That's no problem. We just train all members on using the app and we say, no more email, no more email box. But I don't want to make any member's life difficult. I want them to be able to get the responses that they want in the most convenient manner for them. And that's why we've put the different options on the table for you so that, you know, with the best will in the world, not everyone is going to want to use the app. But if the decision is that we force that, then of course I'm happy to facilitate that process.
Thank you. And Councillor Fox.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. In agreement with what other councillors have said, that fully agree that from May onwards, new incoming councillors go directly straight onto the new app. But we've still got the old email system as our backup. And any councillors that are still councillors after May, existing ones, they've then got the choice whether they want to come over onto the new system and be trained on it, or still continue to use the old system.
Thank you.
Last but not least, yeah, I was one of the people who was on the trial, and you've already explained some of my findings. It wasn't very helpful in the end, I don't think. Lots of residents, when they email, they'll send attachments or they'll upload photographs. It's easy just to press forward and send it to members' inquiries. When you have to download those attachments and then upload them via the app, it doesn't make it easier to raise case inquiries, which was, you know, the intention of the app. It makes it more difficult. And that's largely one of the reasons I've stopped using it, because it was just too time-consuming. And the other thing, you've already mentioned this, there was an option, which I, at first glance, I thought was excellent. It was a request for officers to respond to the resident directly. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, officers obviously clearly don't like that, so they weren't doing that, and it made it very difficult for me to manage where cases were at and were people getting responses. I had to constantly check. So it didn't work for me in the end. And I think the proof of the pudding's in the eating. The fact that not a single member is now using it kind of speaks for itself, I think, doesn't it? It's not, if it was making things easier for members, they'd be using it. In terms of what we do next, I kind of think we should be making the decision. We have all-out elections in a few weeks. First time in 20 years we've had all-out elections. There's going to be a very high turnover of councillors, whether that's because members are retiring or the electorate is going to retire them for them. There's going to be a huge intake of new members, and I kind of think we shouldn't be making that decision for them. I think we should leave that decision for the next municipal year. I do think it's something that will have to come back to this committee or whoever, but I don't feel very comfortable making a decision for people who aren't councillors yet. So, you know, my preferred option would be to, I would say, continue the trial, but there's nothing actually happening, so it's not. But I think really we should just leave it till there's a new intake of members. There's going to be lots of onboarding that's going to have to go on, lots of training, lots of new members. This is one more thing just to throw into the mix. I'm not comfortable with making a decision, so I wouldn't say discontinue it, although I think it is by extension discontinued because no one's using it. But my advice would be that we just leave it in abeyance for now, and it's something you revisit after the elections and take it up with those members who, let's face it, are them who are raising inquiries for the next couple of years, not the majority of us in here. So, I mean, if members agree, I would just propose that we revisit this in the next municipal year and ask those people who are currently holding office what works for them. I certainly wouldn't want to force it on them. And I certainly wouldn't want to make a decision now to discontinue it. So I'd say leave it till we know who is going to be in this chamber after the elections and let them make the decision. Agreed. Thank you very much. Is that clear? So we're not really, in terms of the recommendations that are in the report, I don't think we're actually going with any of those. The recommendation is to revisit this, or you revisit it with members and the new administration after the elections and see what works best for them.
That's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tracy. That was really helpful. Thank you. So, moving on, item 7, Corporate and Improvement Plan 2025-26, quarter 3. That's on pages 99 to 180 of the agenda. Can I ask Sarah to present the report, please?
Thank you. So in front of you, you've got quarter 3 data reports for our performance, which is to the end of December 25. So the purpose of the report is to understand how our in-year activity is delivering on our corporate improvement plan priorities. So we do this either through milestones, which are tangible pieces of activity linked to the priorities, or metrics which describe a service output, and together they help us achieve that longer term outcome that's described in the plan. At the previous ONS we had a discussion about the need to better describe the impact we are making, and you'll see that in this report where there is a milestone that's completed, we've described the outcome that the activity is working towards. And we've also worked with services to better describe that impact. So in summary, nearly a third of the milestones are complete, with around another 50% on track to be completed by the end of March. Regarding metrics, 60% are on target. There remain service demand pressures. These are occurring in children's. There's high smoking prevalence, lower than benchmark recycling, and there are several targets related to corporate metrics which are currently underperforming. But in this period, we've had the benefit of being able to compare our report to the Commissioner's 6th report. So doing that comparison, we've identified that progress is being made in the same areas, but also we have both identified where there are ongoing requirements for focus. And these are in areas of audit, constitution review, people strategy and financial controls. But I think that review demonstrates that the council's own performance reports have a good level of organisational self-awareness, and our focus to improve is in the right areas. But overall, the progress shows that each of the 10 priorities in the corporate plan are working towards good performance. And we continue to focus on areas of persistent underperformance. And we had a discussion with SLT this quarter to understand more about how we can improve on those. Another area of analysis that we've highlighted in the cover report are where we've identified patterns in underperformance, and we've fed that into services who are undergoing service planning at the moment. These are issues relating to capacity constraints. They have caused delays in some of the milestones, demand management issues, and issues relating to planning for unforeseen adaptations in the time to implement changes, such as responses to community engagement and stakeholder engagement. You'll also see in the corporate ONS paper that there's an appendix following a discussion that we had at the last committee, which was around how we use benchmark data to inform our target setting. So we've provided a bit more information here about where targets are misaligned slightly to the benchmark and why that is in these particular cases. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any questions from members? No? No? Okay. Comments, I think, from me mainly. I do recognise that a lot of work and effort has gone into formulating a corporate plan, but I've made the comment previously, and I'm afraid it still stands. When I read through this, I'm still seeing far too much emphasis on things like putting business cases and working groups and strategies and projects. I'm not seeing what they're delivering. It is, I mean, as a councillor, and I should think as a member of the public, what we want to be seeing is the outcome of these things. I don't think putting together a business case or a strategy or a report or a working group is the outcome. It's just the vehicle to achieve the outcome. I just aren't seeing that. I'm not seeing that. And when I asked a question, I think it's quarter one or quarter two, the answer I got was that, well, we're still quite early in the reporting period. You'll see it. You'll see the outcomes as we get into the later quarters, and there hasn't really been a lot of change. My concern is that if that trend continues, the corporate plan really becomes an irrelevance. And I'm going to be brutally honest. If I was chairing the committee in the next municipal year, which I won't be, you'll be pleased to hear, but if I was, and I was still seeing this kind of narrative, I probably wouldn't want this on the work programme anymore. I'd want a yearly report or something like that, because, as I say, I read one milestone after the other, and it's not actually telling me what services are changing, what's being delivered. It's just like we're aiming for a halfway house, and that's it. We're not actually getting anywhere. Just to give you an example of one of the very few milestones that do tell me something, I think it's on page 43. It's not exactly, an area of great interest for me, but yes, page 43, the middle box there, established the Inspire Hub as a centre for employability and skills in the borough. I won't read it all out. When I read the commentary, it tells me a total of 150 residents have progressed into employment since the start of the programme. The number is increasing all the time. That kind of commentary tells me what the outcome is. I can then think, oh, okay, 150 residents, let's ask how much that's cost. I can then, assess whether I think that's value for money. That's the kind of narrative, the commentary, that I think we need to see more of, because I know what the outcome is. And then it then opens up other lines of inquiry that I might want to make. Like I just said, well, I now want to know how much that costs. Is it value for money? That is a very rare example of the commentary next to the milestone telling me what the outcome is. For all the others, nearly all the others, I'd say at least 70%, I just don't know what the outcome is. So I've said that before. I think if the corporate plan is really going to mean anything and be relevant in the next municipal year, members really need to be pushing this more and saying that we want to see tangible outcomes delivered via the corporate plan and not just strategies and reports and that kind of thing, because they don't really tell us much. So a lot of good work has been done to get to this stage, but I suppose I would just implore you to make sure that we begin to see what the corporate plan is actually delivering, and not thinking that, well, if we get to a point where we're producing reports and strategies and roadmaps and that kind of thing, that's where we're at. That's the thing that we're aiming for, because for residents and us as councillors, it doesn't tell us whether the streets are getting cleaner, whether, you know, antisocial behaviour is coming down, whether libraries are more efficient. It doesn't tell us any of those outcomes. So if I could just have your views on that, and whether you think that's something we could aim for.
Thank you. So I think you're right. These are the pieces of work that are tangible and specific items that are steps to get us to some of those outcomes. And some of them do lend themselves to telling more of a story about an outcome, and others don't. But we've got the whole variety in there, because sometimes those are incremental, those steps. But the annual report does try to do more of that. And that will come at Q4. So we did that for the first time at the last financial year. But that will be an opportunity to think about the activity that we've delivered over the entire year. So we can tell more of a story about how we are improving and the impact that we're delivering for residents. I think that is a challenge to do quarterly. But it's a valid point and something we should reflect on. And perhaps we consider not going into this granular level of detail on some of those specific items of work, and we do take a step back and think bigger picture, and we try and understand how we can do that on a quarterly basis. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Alex.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to reiterate that. I mean, of course, not every milestone is going to link directly to a very clear outcome in terms of services, but equally, when one after the other doesn't really tell me very much about how what has been delivered has actually led to an improvement on outcome. So, as I said, a lot of work has gone into this, and it's really good that we have a corporate plan now, because we didn't have one for a long time, and we've got, you know, very capable officers behind it. But I do think if it's going to be relevant moving forward, we do definitely need to see more outcomes, so that we can actually see, well, what has that achieved, rather than just getting to a point where, as I say, it's the outcome seems to be putting together a report or terms of reference and that kind of thing. So point made there, but thank you for acknowledging that. Just another question for me. 4.8 at page 107 says that we now need to sort of review the metrics milestones and begin stretching them. What's the process for that? How are we going to do that?
So we'll look at this year's performance, we'll look at the trend for this year and last year, we'll look at what work is taking place to inform performance. So it could be that there's a strategy behind it, or there's other activity that's going to make a change. And we'll work with services to understand what the outcome is they want to achieve. We'll also use the benchmarking data that we've got available, and we've got more available data now. The government have published some local outcome frameworks metrics, so we've got a lot more available to us to assess where we are compared to some of our neighbours. So we'll be using all of that information to have conversations. When we do that, we'll also be comparing that back to the corporate plan. We'll be looking at how we want to demonstrate steps towards that longer term picture. So we'll also be thinking about how some of our targets might be adapted to do some of that as well.
Thank you. And in terms of the blue ratings, the ones that are complete, there's quite a few of them in there. Obviously, it'd be a bit hard, really, if they just sort of sit there now as completed. What's the process now for refreshing them and taking them out, so that they don't just sit there and you end up with a plan with lots of completed that aren't actually going anywhere?
So this is in-year data only. So this is our activity for this year only. So after Q4, we will review all of this data. We'll provide an update in the annual report, and then we'll start the process again. So what we'll do is we'll map all of that against the corporate plan. We'll identify where we haven't made as much progress, and we'll look for milestones and metrics to demonstrate how we will make progress on those areas that we haven't yet so far.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Thanks, Chair. I think possibly one way to, or one avenue to look at, which might bring, because I actually think in terms of process and from where we started, this is actually, it's moving very much in the right direction. I think one aspect that I've worked with a lot in doing annual reports, which might be relevant here, is impact reporting. So effectively, you know, rather than talking about we did this, we delivered that, it's, well, how did that impact our clients, our environment, whatever? It's, you know, as a process, obviously when it's linked to annual reports, you know, you're doing it once a year, you're reviewing, you're effectively, you know, you're deciding what your criteria are for describing impact, and then you're looking for evidence that you delivered it. To be able to put something, a framework of you know, what does impact mean in the different, for the different directorates, to put that kind of a framework together, that would allow you then, when reporting on corporate performance, monthly, quarterly, whatever, to link it to something tangible that says, oh, and as a result, we're able to demonstrate this impact on, whether it's on, you know, the cleanliness of the environment, or we're having this impact on homelessness, etc. It's just that extra one bit that says, we're doing this, we're delivering that, yeah, but what's the impact? So I don't think it's a massive fix. It's just maybe looking at impact assessment as a framework to just drag it that extra bit over the line that says, and what? Hope that helps.
Thank you. And yeah, in fairness, I think I'll come back to what I said. We haven't had a corporate plan that long, so you're not going to get from a stage in a very short space of time where you've designed the milestones and the metrics and there is an outcome. I understand there's a process to go through to get some of these outcomes, but I do think, as I said, over the course of next year, we should expect to start seeing more outcomes rather than sort of halfway houses as I see them. So it's an observation, certainly not criticism, because as I say, we've come a long way, and you know, this does look very professional. We've got very capable officers. It's certainly not a criticism, but I think if the corporate plan is going to be relevant moving forward and not just something we do that as a process, and I hope it does stay relevant, I think we do need to see a little bit more how that's actually leading to change. But I think I made that point. Are there any other questions or comments? No, thank you. So in terms of the recommendations, we're asked to note, I think we have. I don't think as a committee we're making any recommendations as a whole to Cabinet. I mean, my views are recorded, but I think, again, because of where we are, it's the new administration and new municipal year, I think, are going to have to pick this up and own it and decide where they go. So thank you, Sarah, for the update. That's really helpful. We note the corporate plan and the information in it, but I don't think there's any recommendations as such at this point. That's for other people. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is item 8, Local Government Reorganisation and Devolution Update. Can't wait for this one. Page 181 on the agenda. Alex.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not quite sure how to follow that. So the committee has before it a slide deck providing an update on both devolution and local government reorganisation. It's a summary. I can be even more brief because I think everyone is relatively aware of where we are. So if I start with devolution, before Christmas, the government chose to announce that although we were on track to be ready for a mayoral election in May 26, the election was postponed for 2 years to May 2028. You had already considered a paper, and Cabinet had already considered the framework for creating that combined authority that would be implemented via a statutory instrument, and I had a delegation to approve it once it was ready. That's a material change by delaying the election for 2 years, so we'd have to go through that approval process again, in view of Essex, Southend and Thurrock councils going through local elections, it is only right that we don't do that until the other side of May, when we have where we know where we are and what any new administration might want to do in terms of devolution. The government has been clear in those 2 years until a mayoral election there will be some money to run the combined authority, which is reassuring. It's not as much as we had originally thought. Once we'd have a mayor, that doesn't kick in until 28, but there will be work and some investment opportunities that we'll be able to pursue in the run-up to a mayoral election. In terms of the preparation, because you have asked me before whether we are prepared for a mayoral combined authority for May, we were in a very strong position to do that. The delay has an impact, and we have stood down teams. Actually, we've paused a lot of work in developing the operating model, and that's true across all three of the constituent authorities. The strand that is continuing, which is the strand that Thurrock leads on, is policy, because there are certain things in that period where we are going to need to cooperate with our neighbours, and because we'd already set up a way of working with each other. So, for example, around developing a new spatial development strategy, we will continue to do that. It's not particularly burdensome. We have good policy teams across the three councils, and we will just continue that partnership. But we'll look at this again on the other side of May. Local government reorganisation. We have submitted our proposal, the best proposal, along with others for Greater Essex, and we await a decision from government on that. We are told it will be between, well, the mid to late March, which we take in good faith that will indeed be a decision for us, and we will understand which model we will move towards, whether it be the 5, the 4, or the 3. Along with that, there'll be something called a structural changes order, which is a piece of secondary legislation that in essence enacts the structural change within Greater Essex. So it sets out how you abolish the existing councils, how you create joint committees, which are the precursor to a shadow authority in May of next year. What the council is called, who's the returning officer, how it's implemented. Informally, at official level, and this was debated at full council or considered in a question, the government did ask us for views on how that should work. There was considerable consensus across Greater Essex as to how that should work. Where there was a slight variation is about the role of a unitary authority, an existing unitary, and both Thurrock and Southend have taken a united position that because we already function as fairly successful unitary authorities that understand how you integrate a service from the perspective of the end user from top to bottom. We know how to run social care, we know how to shape a place, which is different from districts and counties, that we should be maximising the experience that we have. So we've certainly fed back to government that whichever new authority we end up in, we would expect to take a leading role in developing that new authority. We are making preparations within the council to make sure that we're ready to deliver LGR when it comes. There's a lot of very getting the basics right. Do you understand your data? Do you understand your establishment, your budgets? And actually, one of the advantages of being a council in intervention is that we have had a lot of scrutiny. We've had to improve a lot of things. So we're in a healthy state. Our partners are going through that journey at the moment. But we remain ready, eager, and keen to just hear a decision so that we know what the outcome is and then we can start implementing it. As always, happy to take questions.
Thank you, Alex. Are there any questions? Councillor Cockshaw.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alex. Appreciate a lot of councillors are probably well briefed on this process, and I look forward to when perhaps the words local government reorganisation no longer have to come off my lips. But in terms of where we are with devolution, I'm very mindful that obviously, what have we had any soundings from government regarding obviously Norfolk's decision to pull from the programme and of the DPP programme? Has there been any knock-on impacts? Obviously, appreciate Suffolk then loses its mayoralty, but are the government still fully committed to doing this, or is there now actually we're going to find in March going, oh, actually we may delay a little bit longer?
So the government is publicly stating that it is committed. I have no reason to believe that isn't the case, and the reason why I say that is because they have increased the money that from originally £14 million per year to 16 million in those 2 years running up to the May 2028 election. Informally with officials in MHCLG and the Minister Miata Fambula, she's been very keen to emphasise that indeed those other areas in Norfolk Suffolk may well make a choice, but the government is still committed. And I think, cannot speak for any of the administrations after May, but the arguments that we considered when we thought about whether we should join the programme, about what devolution can offer, the investment that it would unlock, remain true now. And we will consider that after May with an administration, whether that still holds true.
Are there any other questions or comments? No. I don't think there's a lot to say, really, is there? I mean, I don't think really we should... Councillor Cecil.
Will we have a full council or some sort of assembly where the whole, excuse me, the whole findings are revealed to us, we get a chance to discuss them, and we get a chance to understand the next steps forward? Because frankly, the government's going to decide, then what's going to happen?
Did you want to come back on that, Alex?
So I think that's equally true for officers, actually, in terms, because the variations of the models, I think one is relatively simple for Thurrock. One of the other schemes is incredibly complex. So having to work out what comes next, once we have that decision, we need to really unpick what this means. So once we get the minded to decision from government, we all collectively need to work through what the implications, how do we make this a reality, what are the risks involved and opportunities. I cannot speak about whether there will be a council meeting to debate that, but I would certainly suggest that there is merit in making sure that there is a full briefing at least for members to fully understand what these issues are for the next municipal year, because it is the biggest change this council is going to face, without a doubt. It is the I think big issue for Thurrock Council for the next 2 years.
Councillor Fox.
Thank you, Chair. With us still not knowing when this date in March is going to happen, and the simple fact that PERDA kicks in on the 27th of March, how does this, if it drifts backwards and backwards and backwards, how could you then get into a situation, if it then drifted in past the 27th of March, and then you get into, could you actually have a full council meeting?
So I make no comment or commitment at all as to whether there is a council meeting before elections, and I'm not suggesting there is. I'm suggesting that in the longer term that it needs to be worked through so that we understand how we implement this. I think, if I may, there's an interesting point there about if there is delay beyond, for example, beyond the election, you could say that. The difficulty is at the other end of this timetable, vesting date of a new authority doesn't change. So it does shrink that implementation period. So whether it's around a debate for full council, whether it's around officers working with partners, whether it's about creating a joint committee, it does put that programme under more pressure. We do recognise that. Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? I think, the way the government has U-turned on this, or certainly on devolution and other things, I think anything we say or anything we put reliance on, we're probably foolhardy, because it could change by breakfast time and lunchtime. We've got something else. So I think we just have to see how this pans out. I certainly it would be a real wasted opportunity if devolution and local government reorganisation wasn't delivered. I'm sceptical now, unfortunately, but I hope I'm proved wrong. Certainly in the case of local government reorganisation, if it doesn't happen, it puts Thurrock in a very difficult position, because we just aren't sustainable, and that isn't going to change. all the time we remain a standalone unitary authority. So there's a lot riding on this for Thurrock, and I sincerely hope, you know, the government now approaches this in good faith, because I don't think it has up until now. As I say, it's not just for us something that we need to do because it unlocks opportunities. It's something we need to do for really our very survival. So more than any local authority in Essex, we have a lot riding on this. Alex, thank you. I don't think there's anything more we can say. We await the government's decree. So the recommendation is to note the update. Noted. Thank you very much. Okay, so the next items, item 9, item 10, item 11, I'll take them on block, and that's the work programme at page 191 to 196, the action log, which is 197 to 200, and the recommendation tracker at 201 to 218. I'm going to ask Lucy if she can just briefly introduce all those items together and alert us to anything that we should know.
Thanks, Chair. So as we're at the last substantial meeting of the municipal year, there's not too much to update on the work programme. In terms of the action log, I think there's only one outstanding, which I've noted is outstanding, and will carry through into 2026-27. Happy to take any comments, questions, as always. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy. Are there any questions or comments on those items? No. Can we take them as noted? Yep. Thank you. So it is 8:31. That marks the time of the meeting closing. Can I just, this is our last meeting of the municipal year, so can I just say thank you to all members for engaging during the year, and of course thanks to members. I don't think, officers even. I don't think, even when I think we've given officers a hard time, there isn't a single officer, I think, who's come before us who we can't say we haven't got confidence in their abilities. And I think we've seen certainly in the 2 years that I've been chair, there's been a marked improvement in the direction of travel, and that's in no small part due to the dedication of officers. So thank you for that, and thank you for engaging with the committee and supporting us along the way. So it's actually now, well, no, it's still 8:31. And, Councillor Fletcher.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I'm going to take it on myself, and I hope I am speaking for everybody. I just wanted to say thank you very much for your chairmanship over the last couple of years. It's been an absolute pleasure to serve with you, and I think it's been, I suppose, the quality of your chairing has been reflected in the quality of the increased quality of the outputs of this committee. So thank you very much.
Oh, that's very kind of you. And you read that script I gave you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, everyone. That's really kind. So it's now 8:32, and the meeting is now closed. Thank you.